Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on. The Old Panel Wagon, submitted by Donnie Mack. My story begins in 1978. I was a young guy just starting to produce live athletic shows in my city, working with professional athletes who flew in from all over the country. They needed hotel accommodations and transportation, and I wanted to impress them, to make them feel comfortable by picking them up in a brand new car. The only problem was, I didn't own one, and this is where my story truly begins. Several months earlier, I was introduced to a man named Vince, who owned a handful of new car dealerships in southern Illinois. I went to him hoping he'd buy a large enough ad in my show's program to help offset some of the costs associated with the show. When our meeting ended, he was aware of my dilemma and made me a different kind of deal. He would trade me the use of a new car for a week in exchange for an ad and a few complimentary tickets for him and his employees. It was a trade that benefited both of us. During that time, I met one of his young salesmen, a guy just a few years younger than me named Gary. It was his first month at the dealership, and over the next several weeks I saw him each time I went in to finalize our agreement. The night of the show, I was surprised to see that neither Vince nor Gary had shown up, nor any of the other employees. It was unusual, especially given how much interest they had shown. 2 days later, I went back to return the car, and the atmosphere on the showroom floor was grim. When I asked to speak to Vince and Gary, I was told neither of them was in, and that struck me as very strange. Well, several months passed, and I went back to the dealership. I wanted to thank them for the use of the car and ask why they didn't make the show. Once again, neither of them was in. As I started to leave, I recognized one of the secretaries I had worked with when I first came by the dealership. I explained my confusion about not being able to see Vince or Gary, and she looked around before leaning in closer to tell me the story. The day after I had picked up the car, an old gray-haired man walked into the dealership. He wanted to sell his car outright. Gary happened to be working and explained to him that they usually only bought cars that were being traded in. The vehicle he had was a vintage paneled station wagon, a classic, but nothing the dealership would ever offer money for. But Gary felt a pull towards it. He wanted to restore it himself. Going against company policy, Gary offered the man $300, and the man agreed. They worked out the details, the title was signed, and the old man went on his way. Gary took the car and parked it behind the dealership, telling Vince the next day that he'd like to keep it and have the money taken out of his paycheck. Vince agreed. Gary also told Vince he had never felt so uneasy since taking the car salesman job as he did with this guy. Well, the car sat there for 3 months until one day the police showed up. They asked to speak to the owner about the old car in the back of the lot, and Vince directed them to Gary. Detectives grilled Gary for over an hour. A tow truck and a crime scene unit arrived, and men in white suits and blue gloves began taking pictures of the car from every angle, inside and out. They even took carpet fiber samples. After the police took the car away, the dealership didn't hear anything for weeks. Because the title had been signed and transferred to the dealership, the police came back to speak with Vince and Gary once again. They said that they'd been looking for that car for 2 years. When Vince pressed them for more information, the detectives looked at one another, then looked at Vince and Gary, and told them the car belonged to John Wayne Gacy, and it was believed to have been one of the cars he'd used during his reign of murders. The secretary finished her story by saying that Vince could no longer work at that particular dealership, only at his others. As for Gary, she said he outright quit. The weight of what he had so innocently acquired was just too heavy for him to bear. 2 Girls, 1 Demon, submitted by Play-Doh Master. I've been helping people with the Ouija board for many years, advising them what to do and what not to do. Some people really don't understand that. They think if they use the board, something fun will happen. It can, but it's very rare. Checking my Ouija support email one day, I came across one from a very scared person who told me they thought they had a demon. They told me that they had a ghost in the house, but it was a friendly one they all quite enjoyed. The people that live in the small house with the friendly ghost were 2 sisters, both in their 20s. One night, they had a friend stay the night, and she had brought with her a Ouija board. They started using it to contact their ghost friend and were successful. After that one occasion, they started making homemade boards, using them to talk to their ghost friend and then throw them away in the trash. And the next couple of days, just make another one. That right there is not only a no-no, but has to be one of the biggest no-nos in no-no history. After that, they said that they would come home to their place trashed. They would see things in the corner of their eyes, and then one of the girls was attacked while in the shower. She said she was taking a shower when all of a sudden this instant pain went right down her back, and when she asked her sister to look at it, she had 4 large scratch marks going down her back. She included pictures of the scratches in her email, and yes, indeed, they were quite large. I normally or hardly ever help people after they use the board, but on this particular occasion I believe they needed it more than ever. I also then found out that I wasn't the first person that they'd contacted. They also spoke with a local psychic who is what I call an automatic writer, which basically means she can contact the dead through writing something on paper or through the Ouija board. I was also told that this psychic lady had recommended me. They wanted me and the psychic to meet at their house. Luckily, they only lived a few miles down the road from me. I drove there while the automatic writer and her friend, who was also a psychic, were scanning the house. Her friend was also a psychic that can sometimes see and talk to ghosts directly, as well as feel their emotions, an empath. The 2 girls who lived in the house were outside, which is probably where the psychic told them to be, because you're supposed to let the psychic figure out things about what's going on for themselves. The girls welcomed me, and shortly after, the 2 psychics walked outside, one in tears. The empath, who sees and feels the ghost, said that the friendly ghost is a man who used to live in the house by himself. Even though he was a successful man, he was alone, and his loneliness drove him to kill himself. The psychic said that even though he was still alone, he still felt happier because the 2 girls had moved in, but after they used the board, it brought up an evil spirit that then started abusing the poor man. She said that what she wanted to do was, while she went from room to room trying to purify each one, she wanted me and the automatic writer to help the good ghost escape from the demon's clutches. We all got things set up, and I had just gotten about everything I needed so that I would only be addressing the friendly ghost and not the demonic one. We started by asking if it was a good spirit. The planchette went to yes. I then looked at the automatic writer to see that she was starting to connect with the man. He then went on to say that he tried to warn the girls not to use the board, but they didn't see his signs. In the back of the house, I heard one of the girls scream. The 2 girls were with the psychic, and then I went on to tell the man that he had to find the light and must leave at once. He disagreed. He told us that if he left, that the demon would have more control. I then told him that if he continued to stay, then the demon would eventually use him to cause harm to the girls. We then heard the psychic yelling for the demonic spirit to leave. The 2 girls in the back were screaming, and you could hear things breaking. I then asked the old man to leave, but I got no response. The psychic stopped yelling, and the girls stopped screaming. I asked it again, and again no response on the board. I looked at the automatic writer, and her eyes were rolled in the back of her head, and she would go back and forth from the letter A to the letter Z. The psychic and the girls walked into the room, and the psychic yelled very loudly, "Leave!" I turned around to see my slat circle get broken, and the candles that I had placed were burned out. I then looked at the automatic writer, and she jumped on top of me, speaking a language I did not understand, a voice that wasn't hers. She kept trying to scratch me in the face, and it connected. She left a gash on my face, tearing skin. It hurt more than you can imagine. The psychic then told me and the girls to hold her down at once, and I felt as if I was stronger. I had the strength come over me. So I pried the automatic writer off of me and held her arms down while both girls held down her legs. The psychic then pulled out a Bible and started reading a part of it while flicking holy water on the automatic writer. The screaming coming from her was enough to make your ears pop. She was very difficult to hold down, but I wasn't letting go. After a while, it eventually got quiet. A mess from the things that were thrown around strewed about the room, but everything was nice and peaceful. The automatic writer then came back and gave her psychic friend a big hug. The other two girls gave me a hug while thanking me, and then gave everyone a hug. Both me and the automatic writer went to the hospital. She had a broken arm and a broken wrist, and I had to get stitches from the scratch she had left. Months later, we're doing fine. I went back to the girls' house to see if that man was still there watching over them, and indeed, he still was. He said that he will continue to take care of them, and I respect that. I also asked him about how I became stronger, and he said, and I quote, "I may have possibly helped you out a little." I just smiled. After a while, their house did have some other disturbances, but they eventually stopped, which is normal. Every once in a while, I go down to the girls' house to check on them myself. After the automatic writer healed up, she sent me an email thanking me for everything. She said, though, she's going to retire. And you know what? I guess I can't blame her. The Bear, submitted by Renee. In the early 2000s, I worked as a canoe guide out of northern Manitoba. The vast majority of our clientele were American Scouts, and I loved working there. All the trips were done by float planes. We had one island with a few dozen canoes stashed on it, and from there we would bring our groups out on various routes ranging from 4 days to 8 days. We were so far north that we could watch the sun set at 11 p.m. It was awesome to read a book until 10:30, and a few hours later you had a decent chance at watching the aurora borealis. The fishing there was phenomenal as well. The mosquitoes would generally come out between 8 and 9 p.m., so at that time we'd make sure that we had our campsite ready for the night. We would hear them bouncing off the walls of our tents for an hour before they went away. And the scary part didn't really happen on the trail. It happened at base camp. The base camp was set up in a small village of maybe 600 people and millions of black flies. It was actually quite hilarious watching vans or busloads of scouts arriving and being greeted by the swarms of them. They were almost doing the Macarena dance while swatting at those pesky bugs, and the bugs were so thick that it looked like you were looking through a screen when they were out. Anyway, one day we got more crews arriving on base than normal. 2 or 3 crews getting off the water and 2 groups arriving. We basically had more crews than cabins, and we had no choice but to make the outgoing groups sleep in tents, while the ones getting off the water would have the cabins and have access to the showers. Despite all of our safety talks and telling the guests that they should never have food in their tents, they basically ignored us or didn't listen properly. Or just didn't care. That night, kids were going to bed, and a black bear decided to come in for a visit, and was heading straight for the tents. When I saw the bear, I quickly took a pot and pan from the kitchen and ran into the field, banging the pot with the pan and yelling for it to go away, get out, get lost. I kept my arms over my head to try to make myself look bigger. The giant black furball was not impressed and seemed mostly annoyed by me. He stopped, turned in my direction, then started swaying his head from side to side, and proceeded to tap the ground, and then started to bolt straight towards my direction. He probably covered half the length of a football field in 3 seconds, and all I could think was, try to hit its muzzle with the pot and pan, while also thinking that I was too young to die. When he got about 8 or 10 feet from me, he abruptly stopped running, sat down and stared at me for almost 5 or 10 seconds. I was scared shitless, and still holding the pot and pan over my head to make myself look big. This bear sat less than 10 feet away from me. Then he tilted his head sideways and looked back at me. I think he was looking at me and saying in his head, "Who the hell do you think you are, asshole?" Then he slowly got up, lifted his giant paw and swatted at the ground. He sent a giant piece of sod flying about 10 feet. I got his message loud and clear. Don't mess with me. He then slowly walked towards the main lodge, got up on the deck, and sniffed around the building for a minute or so, and then he went back into the woods. When he was in the bush, I was still standing there, arms above my head in the field, telling myself that that would be the last time I would ever do something like that. When I looked over at the tents with dozens of kids and scout leaders looking at me, I just said loudly and angrily, "Any food or anything that smells sweet is to come out of your tents now." I then proceeded to say quietly, almost to myself, "The bear comes back. Don't expect me to do what I just did again." I didn't know if they heard my last words, but I intended to stand by them, and that's what I did. A Piece of Hell Escaped, submitted by Moofox. For a long time, I'd be seeing this strange woman no matter where I went. I quickly gained knowledge about the paranormal and supernatural, and seeing that woman became a little bit more rare. My grandmother then told me that most of us in the family had seen these beings, but just stayed in silence so that we kids wouldn't be curious, then scared. Years later, my parents decided to break up because of some issues. So from time to time I would visit my mother, who lived with her parents in another place in the city far from my father's house. The place was different, beside our house, which was a ground where many children could play, and I can say it was the start of my exposure to the outside world. There was this season for us children that we called spider fighting, like roosters fighting, but spiders were used instead. We waited for the afternoon or evening to go to hunt for spiders that were suitable for fighting because, as they say, specific spiders come out during late hours. Our neighbors, a little bit older than us, told us that there was a type of spider that lived in the cornfields that was superior to any other kind and could be located at the base of the hills near our houses, which had cornfields owned by farmers living there. My friends and I decided to see each other later one night after the rain poured. We were going to head to the hills, and after finalizing our plan, they warned us to not go beyond the cornfields, especially on rainy days. That was quite the weird statement, but we decided not to ask why, because all we could think of was spiders. It was around 8 in the evening, and our parents gave us permission to do our escapade because we lived in a compound-like place. Most houses were close to the other, and we all knew our neighbors. It was either our grandfathers, fathers, or uncles. They were all colleagues. There were 7 of us, and only 2 brought flashlights, so we decided to split up into 2 groups. We consisted of 4, while the 3 remaining started far from us. Before we started, the farmers told us to stay in the cornfields, as permitted, and never go beyond it because of the rainy days. We asked why, and they told us that the light outside their houses reached only where the cornfields were. Being growing kids that knew scary stuff, it was easily understood. Minutes passed of walking and searching through the cornfields, and we each caught a spider, and then we looked for the other group. We saw a light, not too bright, but able to illuminate the surroundings, probably meters away from us. We headed straight for it, thinking it was our friends still searching for spiders. But the light was not within the cornfields. but from a large mango tree which was next to it. When we were almost up to it, we heard what sounded like a chain being dragged. As we reached the moving light and the sound of these chains, a fireball the size of a basketball floating in midair, carrying a chain and dragging the other end of it, came towards us. It was circling around the tree like it was looking for something. At first, we were stunned, and then looked at each other with confused faces and ran like hell. It was every man for himself. I just took off on my own, ignoring where my friends were. I couldn't get myself together with all this tension and fear, and I finally stopped at the waiting place beside our house. It was a shed. The other group was already there waiting for us, and the 2 others in my group were there sweating and shivering. We all talked about what we had seen, and some of our neighbors who had told us about the cornfields were laughing at us as they told us they had also encountered what we had seen. They called it St. Elmo, also known as St. Elmo's fire. It's said that it comes from the blood of a murder victim who hasn't received justice, and as soon as his or her blood, even a stain, is washed away by the rain, that's where and when the St. Elmo appears. We never went back to that place. My mother said it was a product of my imagination, but I know it wasn't. I mean, it's impossible that a number of us had the same imagination without even saying what to imagine. But I got over that until one night years later, when I was staying in my father's house. I was kind of a foolish kid growing up. I let everybody in the house sleep at night and tiptoed my way down the living room to watch television. I'll describe my living room, just so you get a better idea of what it looks like. On the way down the stairs were windows, which had flower-like carvings, so you really couldn't see the figure on what was outside. If you turn right, just when you reached the ground, that was where the television was. To the left was a door leading to the garden, and on the right side of the television was a couch, and at the end of it were transparent windows looking outside. A few inches away, in front of the television, was another set of couches. So I sat down on the couch next to the TV because I just applied the slightest volume so only I could hear it and no one would wake up. Hours later, as I was watching, there was a bright orange light outside of the windows on the stairs. Behind the television is the stairs and then the windows with the flower-like carvings I mentioned. So I got up, went to the end of the couch and looked out the window. And there it was again, the fireball they call St. Elmo. This time there were 2 of them, but they were smaller than the one we had seen years before. They were right outside our gate, floating, and seemed to be chasing one another. Well, that was it for me. I switched the television off and went to bed as fast as I could. That was the last time that I saw that being or beings. Only one thing confuses me, though. I mean, are the legends about them true? They say once they're disturbed, they'll chase you until they burn you to ashes. That could just be a whole bunch of superstitious hogwash, but I'm not volunteering myself to find out if, in fact, it is true. I hope it's not. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode, and a special thanks to all of the people who sent in stories for me to share with you this time. I love when subscribers and listeners send their stuff in. That's what this podcast is all about. I really appreciate it, and it's been quite a while since I've done an entirely listener-supported episode. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you'd like me to narrate, email it to UncleJoshTrueScaryStories@gmail.com. I read them all. If you're listening to this on YouTube and you like what you heard and saw, why not give the video a thumbs up? Leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of the stories. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you're not a subscriber, hey, now's the time. Hit that subscribe button. Everyone, be excellent to each other. And until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.